how you tied in being a performer to your life.
Well, I didn't want to, because I was brought up with the secret that we were really Jewish, because the reason that my father converted our family to Catholicism, what happened was, well after my parents escaped Europe by a whisker, and we're living in Canada, and we're Orthodox Jews in a small town in Saskatchewan called Morris, which is kind of like the American Midwest. It was just a little rednecky town. They were the only Orthodox Jews, audibly and visibly very Jewish. My dad was from Vienna, my mother was from Bremen, Germany, and a anti-Semitic German doctor and his wife beat my father up and left him for dead. And my dad's
in Canada?
In Canada in 1951. I have the newspaper clipping at home. And so my dad's post-traumatic stress disorder, although there was no term for it at that time, that was coined after Vietnam, was re-triggered, and he thought, oh my gosh, like another Holocaust is going to happen, this time in Canada. Why would I risk losing another family? So he forced my very religious mother to convert to Catholicism, anglicize their name, relocate, cut off ties with all relatives, and by the time I was born, we were this good little Irish Catholic family.
Do that dramatically or comedically?
Both. And I toured for years as a stand-up comic in Canada with Yuck Yucks, which is a national Canadian chain, and I did not want to reveal the truth of my identity. However, at one point in the very middle of my act, I had a little snippet, a little bit about how ridiculous it was that, such visibly and audibly sounding Jewish people were pretending to be Irish Catholic. I don't remember the bit, but it was like, comparing it to how an African-American person would pretend to be like, of Asian descent or Chinese, you know what I mean? Something's wrong with the picture. And people took to that. And then I was approached by a small-time theater director in Vancouver to write a solo show. And out of that, I had this inner voice which always said, tell your story, tell your story. But something, when you're brought up with a secret, Iris, it like is aching to get out. And so I went ahead and I wrote my first show in 1995. It was called The Waltonsteins, and it changed my life. I immediately got international press in the Jerusalem Report magazine. But before I wrote the show, I ran it by my family. And you have to understand, this is not because they were terrible people, because they were, when you're brought up with a secret on a daily basis and told, revealing this can get us killed. And my dad did that. He made us, the keeper of the Holocaustica. We were brought up with this terror. I have 7 siblings. They're all, very successful professional people, but they were so worried that I was going to reveal our secret to the world. And
when did they find out? When did you find out?
I found out when I was probably 9 years old, but I think my dad slipped up at the dinner table and said something about, a Jewish, and I was like, Daddy, what's a Jewish? And then he made me, hear all these stories about the Holocaust, but it was always followed by, but never, ever, ever tell anyone, because it could get you killed. So all of a sudden, as a little girl, my world changed, and I had this dark secret that could likely get us murdered. And she finally believed me that it was real, because what actually happened, which was, undeniably an extremely important component to the telling of the story, to make it current, is last year, on April 23rd, President Obama, appeared at the Washington Memorial Museum for a memorial and invited survivors up, Elie Wiesel and many others, and also my uncle, who's a survivor, who is, an old rabbi from New York, to light one of the memorial candles. And it's just to have a black president of the greatest superpower of the world with an old Jewish rabbi on stage together to honor everybody who was lost and those who are here is so profoundly stamp of approval, and I'm so grateful for that. Is Arthur Hiller came into my life, the legendary film director. Yes. He heard, I'm like a little Canadian schmo. He heard about my work and read that in some piece that I had written, a multicast feature film screenplay, asked to read it, and then called me. I thought it was a joke, Iris. Phoned me and asked me if he could direct. And I went, okay, I think that'd be all right, Arthur. Yeah, okay, this once, And so I've had the incredible good luck of working under his tutelage for 12 years. And he was attached to direct, and we had a deal with a Canadian company. It didn't happen. I'm glad it didn't, because now it's a very different script, the same way that my show has emerged.